We live in an era of constant upgrades. We update our phones, our apps, and our enterprise software almost daily. But while we pour trillions into digital transformation, we often ignore the most critical part of the stack, the human wisdom operating system. The data tell us the gap between our tools and our human infrastructure is reaching a breaking point. The World Economic Forum warns that by 2030, two-fifths of our existing skill sets will be completely outdated, yet most organizations are still using training methods designed for the last century. The hard truth is that 21st century software cannot run on a Stone Age brain. When we ignore our human infrastructure, we don't get innovation, we get burnout, friction, and expensive failures. To survive the digital age, we don't just need better tools, we need better human packaging. Today, we are diving deep into how to bridge this gap with Barbara Wittmann, CEO of the Digital Wisdom Collective. Barbara is a pioneer in shifting the focus from digital literacy to digital wisdom, helping leaders and teams rewire themselves for an exponential world. Barbara, thank you very much for making it to our show.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Listen, I have so many questions because I think digital transformation is like the hot topic. Everybody has to say something, and if you put AI in the middle, it sounds really like cool. We have spoken a lot about it and about some of the threats, how many people are fearful of this transformation, of this change, or some of them are just ignorant of the implications of what it can bring. And talking about humans in the context of AI or digital transformation, I think this is an appropriate moment to have a, how do you say, a naked truth talk. And I have an initial question because you probably heard that I'm really interested about the aspect of what is the reaction of the brain towards all these changes that are happening. And I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, we know that humans are biologically evolved for a world of physical threat and slow change, yet we live in a world of digital threats and exponential change. What does science tell us about our human operating system? Is it currently crashing into the digital age or is it full bullshit?
So that's an interesting one because I think essentially we have a perception problem. And you were bringing in that we are wired for threats. Yes, that's in our DNA. You know, it's fight or flight is part of us. Um, but you know, I always compare it to when I go hiking here in Colorado, where I live. Um, I am really aware of my surroundings because I am just a part in a larger picture. So I'm aware that there's a bear, that, you know, there's certain other animals that could potentially kill me. So my senses are heightened. And I actually feel safer hiking here and sleeping alone in the wilderness than sometimes going into a boardroom because there is no signals, you know. People stab you in the back without any warning, you know. A rattlesnake gives me a sign. Hey, I'm here. You know, go away, go away. So it really is a perception issue that we are having where we simply need to be a little more aware of where are we? You know, we are so boxed in as humans. And in that box, we are living the fight or flight mode. And in order for us to really evolve in complexity, we need to open up again and really look at the entire ecosystem and really be aware of what's going on. You know, what are the early signals, and not so much look at data points. That is our MO, but also listen between the lines and in a way to sense what's going on. You know, what is the health of the entire system, so to speak.
But it is a very difficult exercise, this level of awareness. So, for instance, when you give the example of hiking, this comfort in maybe a dangerous situation comes from the fact that you have experienced it on your own. In the
Mm.
world of technology, and especially about talking about AI, there is so many contradicting information that comes. Certain people that say, yes, it will create so many jobs. Certain people say most of the jobs are going to be replaced. Then there is which AI to trust. We use this one. We use Grok, for instance. Scary. Or do we use ChatGPT? Is it scary? Maybe yes, too.
Mm.
We don't know, in fact, who, to whom to believe because we don't, the understanding of the ethics and the influence that we can have behind this beautiful, appealing bot that is answering our questions. We don't know how much it can be manipulated. So we don't know what to believe. Barbara, what could be the right way to validate this level of awareness that you are mentioning?
Man, there's like so many layers in there, and there's like fear over fear over fear over fear. So it's okay. So let's unpack this a little bit. So what we have unlearned is the ability to coexist. So essentially, a ChatGPT or any other happy AI helper is a co-working buddy. But for that to come in and to really enter my world, I need to know what I'm good at. And I need to understand who am I and what am I strong at? And what gives us fear is because we don't know enough about ourselves. So if I'm, insecure about, how I'm doing things, or I have a very low self-esteem about myself, I feel very threatened about what's coming in. On the other hand, if I understand that I am really good to connect people, then, I am absolutely clear that AI will never be able to take that away from me. And that's when I can shift what am I delegating and how do I actually co-create and use that AI power in a positive sense. But for that, as an individual, the base that you need to be aware of, what are my values that guide me? And
Mm.
also on a different level is as a company, what are your core values? A lot of companies have it on the website, and that's where it lives, but they don't, interact like it. They don't bring it to life. So to me, values is a very foundational block on using AI and also defining ethics on how we are doing things. Yeah.
This ethic thing. So we need to have a point. I mean, I wish that everybody was equipped, including myself, 1 year ago about all the mistakes that I have done using AI. I will not mention it in this forum how many mistakes I have done using AI. I also have heard about the people doing mistakes or believing, yeah, this doesn't work. And when you see their prompts, then you see why it didn't work because AI cannot guess
Mm.
what you have in your mind. You didn't have enough context. The use of AI today is very often misinterpreted, and people are putting everything into AI, and they don't know that this little thing of sharing a little bit of information from the company can be reused either for the learning of AI or can appear because it has happened maybe a couple 6 7 months ago that people could find some prompts that have been done, and I was wondering, what have I been prompting that could be found? I was a little bit scared about that. So how do
Yeah.
we create this uh, like a pattern of behaviors that we can have in order to validate that we are not being led or manipulated to feed the beast, and this feeding the beast can have implications for the
Mhm.
company that I'm working for or for ourselves.
Yeah. So the question is, how do we collaborate as people, and how do we ask questions and delegate as people? And to me, prompt engineering has a lot to do with how do I ask questions and how do I delegate to also my coworkers. So instead of throwing in an AI tool, we need to really practice our muscle of how we are communicating with our coworkers. That is one piece, and also how do we listen? So very, very simple things. So in order for AI to really be successful in organizations, we need to open these collaboration spaces where we explore, where we play a little bit.
Mm,
I would not really roll out I mean, how companies are doing it is like send out an email and say, yo, you all got Copilot now,
mm,
die happy, that kind
yeah.
of thing. But that's not how it works. So you always need to have somebody in a department that is wearing the hat basically to get people excited about it, to also ask, hey, what is a good use for it? How is it really helping you? This is a co-creation moment. And we are not really good at co-creating, even amongst ourselves.
Mm,
Because if you really open that space and say, hey, why don't we just meet once a week and everyone shares a positive experience about how AI supported their work. That's how we are creating context. That's how we are, creating new ideas, new ways of doing things. But for that to happen, you need to have a certain cultural baseline, and you have to have a culture of sharing. And the person that is running that meeting also needs to create a space where it's like, hey, it's okay to also share what didn't work, because we're all here to figure this out together. So there's no right or wrong. So you need to set the right context.
mm,
The other piece is if I am, as an employee, if I feel absolutely and totally insecure in what I'm doing and who I am, I will leverage that AI body a ton more because I will, cycle everything through that machine and say, hey, I prepped this. Are you sure this is going to work? Are you sure this my boss is going to like that? But what I'm doing there is my own limitations in my head are being put in an AI machine, and I train a pattern to
mm.
basically have the same limitations as me. So AI is amazing, but we also need to be aware that AI can only be as good as we are. So, that's why we are big fans of upgrading ourselves first, right? Because we need to keep level with what's going on. If you look at AI models, they are like going and evolving at the speed of light. And yet we as humans, we're, still the same, and we don't see any need of doing anything.
This sentence, upgrading ourselves, I have the impression that it takes a little bit a different dimension than the traditional way that we have been learning technical skills or even soft skills in the corporate world. So there has been a period of a lot of 3 days training in class where people are listening. Basically, it's just acquiring or transmitting knowledge without practice.
Mhm.
Then there was the era of e-learnings that boom just before COVID and grew up like exponentially during COVID. And I have the impression that for the transformation that you are talking about, this is doesn't work. It
Mhm.
doesn't upgrade anything because if things are evolving so quickly, you cannot teach anymore technology or educate people on digital literacy one by one because things are changing every month. Uh,
Yep.
there is a need for something else. There is a need to upgrade. I think in psychological terms, you call it meta skills to teach
Yep.
people how to learn rather than to teach them the object. Is that correct, Barbara? How would you do it? How would you go into building this digital wisdom?
Yeah, so a couple of things. We yes, one-off trainings don't work anymore. And in my mind they've never worked because we went about training humans and absolutely the wrong way. If you are upgrading a technical system, if you are patching your ERP system, you would never just flip it live. You would always test it. You have a test environment.
Hmm.
You go through rigorous cycles of making sure that there's no bugs in the system before you actually flip the switch. Well, no one ever thought about that maybe humans need a test ground too. Because you cannot expect that you are being taught communication skills and then tomorrow you will turn around and communicate entirely
Hmm.
differently. And it's like a magic wand, right? It's like bling, oh, yay, now I'm different. It doesn't work like that. So we need to have spaces where we practice new skills because you only learn with repetition. That's how we change behavior.
Hmm.
But it also means that we need to start thinking in a circular cycle again and not linear. Our entire world is made linear. We start something, we end something, and we need to start thinking again in repetitive cycles, in closing a loop and then opening a next one. And that is something we have totally lost. And nature is our best example for that. That, you cannot just go from one point to the next. You cannot just jump over winter because you don't like it. So we need to accept that we are thinking in cycles again. That needs to be practiced. But also, you were talking about a behavioral upgrade, and that to me is the individual mindset, and that is at the core of what we teach. Because essentially, in order to change how you look at things and how you interact, you first need to transform you. So you need to be willing to look within and clean house.
Huh.
And that to me will be the next high potential criteria. Is the employee willing to learn about themselves, to transform, to change, to stretch? Because what I see a lot, and I've fixed broken transformation projects for 25 years, and the same pattern that I kept seeing is that there's leaders in the middle who have all the solutions, but they don't have the voice. So they get consultants that are put next to them that cost a ton of money. And then the consultant is basically repeating the idea that the employee has. So to me, the big question is how do I empower that person and how do I give that person a seat at the table? And that has a lot to do with how you see yourself. What is your self-image? So I didn't, come into IT, through the straight path. So I came in sideways. And for the longest time in my career, I always felt like an imposter. And
Hmm.
I always thought that no IT person would listen to me. And that's exactly the same thing I find in companies. A lot of business people that really have great ideas, but they're like, well, I don't know. I don't understand technology. Why would I bring in my voice?
Hmm. Uh, what I have heard from you, and these are keywords that really relate to me quite a lot. I have heard iterations. The fact that it is not a linear possibility, it is
Mhm.
you deliver a small piece of what you need to deliver, and then you prove if it is working or not, and then you move to the next one. And that
Mhm.
idea itself is quite valid. In fact, I have been living in that way since maybe 7, 8 years. My life, not I'm not talking about running a
Yeah.
project. I'm talking about personal life, applying the same philosophy that you use for in
Yeah.
technology to my way of perceiving life, that I need to be able
Mhm.
to rest and not to have a visibility to what is going to be my life in 5 years or 10 years. Just improve continuously so that I get
Yeah.
certain level of satisfaction about what I'm achieving and a certain level of validation to see that nobody has influenced my a choice. So I have heard about iteration, I have heard about awareness, transcendence, collaboration, all the kind of things that in fact bring human beings, either you call it satisfaction or either you call it happiness. I know that
Yeah.
I went too
But you
far.
could.
to that
No,
story.
you could also call it purpose.
Yeah.
And if you look at the next generation coming into the workforce, they want to know why they are doing things, and I think that is a very valid question. You know, I also think it's very valid that they question the craziness that we have pushed for so many years.
Mm.
So yes, I mean, if you are thinking in cycles, that gives you purpose. If you, you know, in a very simple example, if we go back and look at nature, we cannot take harvest away from people.
Mm.
And in many ways we do it because we are so much in grow, 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 and then we're done, and then it's like the next thing. So essentially, for a transformation, for things to really work in a company, you have to become a really good gardener.
Tell me, how do you go about training on these things? So we were talking about collaboration, transcendence, awareness, iteration, thinking in
Mm.
that mode. How do you do a training? Do you do a practice? Do you have an army of coaches? How do you organize
Yeah.
this change?
So yeah, so we consider digital wisdom and its collective as an ongoing practice. And it is something that you enter and then you're constantly upgraded. And that is, in fact, what we also do with any technology infrastructure, because it is, you know, every server you need to upgrade and so on. So we just need spaces where we can do that with humans. And it's not about knowing more, it is learning how to make sense in complexity. So essentially, we are offering a what we call a third space, where people are taken out of their echo chamber of the organization, and we run our collective cross industry, cross hierarchy. So you come in and you learn together. And we have certain baseline of principles that we keep practicing in every session. So people can bring their challenges, and then we are, you know, taking apart the challenge through our learning framework, through our practice framework. That's basically a circular way of solving problems, and everyone can chip in. And what does that with people is very simple. First of all, they are like, wow, you know, I can actually, somebody hears me. And also, man, you know, I would have never asked that UX person, but that person actually had something good to say. Maybe in my own company, I should go and check with that department more. Um, and also, there is a way to learn that collective intelligence has a higher power than just, you know, me trying to figure stuff out. Um, so by experiencing that, they go back into their organization and they are encouraged to try the same things.
Oh, that's beautiful. This is what I call like a real collective for wisdom. So it is not about transmission of knowledge, or it's not only about that, but it's about transmission of know-how between
Hmm.
people in order that they have
Yeah.
the possibility to practice certain principles. It sounds like a
Yeah.
cult, but it's not a cult. It is the same way
Oh
that
God.
philosophy was spread across Greece back thousands of
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
thousands of years ago, by discussion, by sharing with others, and maybe sometimes by arguments, by
Yeah.
argumentation between people. And this is good. This
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
very human way of
And
within technology. Mm.
you know, we have to really become more human, and sometimes the simplest things are the best. So we are essentially targeting middle leaders in the organization because we do believe that change ripples outwards from the middle. Um, a lot of people think that change is pushed from the very top. Of course, you need to have support from the top, but the middle layer is where the juice lies. So if you are empowering just a handful of people in the middle and you give them that practice ground, they will be able to start, you know, planting the seeds in your own organization that the middle layer, it's actually where the execution of strategy happens, that this is starting to function like an ecosystem.
Mm,
And when other people are showing up different, you get curious, as a bystander. It's like, hey, how have you done this? How can I, show up in meetings differently? So it starts to create its own dynamic, where change happens in its own time, essentially. So I'm also not a friend of, oh, we got to start this huge transformation initiative, and now we just have to change our culture within 3 months, and then, or we're going to be agile. It's like, it doesn't. You cannot push that on people. So with the way we are working, you can just, you know, offer that opportunity to a handful of people, and they will then create their own dynamic in the organization. So essentially, we are empowering middle management leaders to lead their own transformation in a way.
hmm. You made me think that back in my younger days, a major transformation inside of the company that I was working for, and they invested within 2 years around $3 million in training about agile. So the agile
Yeah, yeah,
startup approach, and when we were measuring after 2 years the impact that it had on people, the use of the approach and then the understanding of the philosophy, not by test, but saying, did you use it, applied it? There was only a very low percentage of the company who was using it, even though we were talking a lot about a lot of money invested. And when I say the millions, I was mentioning only what we pay to this very expensive agile guru, but
yeah,
without the trips of many people going around the world. So that was a lot of a lot of expenditure because we didn't work on the essentials. First, on the willingness of people, on the preparation of the ground, so that they are receptive to a major change that
yeah.
we have never done in our life. We don't think agile. Usually, we think in a linear way, unless you have been reading and looking
Mhm.
for the answer about why the hell are you so unhappy. Then we don't use
Yeah, yeah.
another approach.
Yeah. I mean, every company that I have worked with, they never lacked the amount of technology or the amount of frameworks and methods. No one needs more of that. No one. It's like both of these things for most companies look like a cluttered garage. You just keep adding. It's like, and it's the next big thing. But what companies really are missing is the empowerment of those who make it happen, and also, in most cases, orientation, because they don't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, that is true. Tell me, you have been describing a little bit the a third place that you want to create when you are onboarding people
Mm,
to this transformation that starts with the people, doesn't start with the technology. And
mm,
thinking loud, digital transformation very often requires experimentation. But
yeah,
in most corporate infrastructure, the rules are built in order to punish error. If you do a mistake, you
yeah,
don't get your bonus, or you are going to be demoted, and everybody lives with this sense of fear that make us sometimes hide the truth. And even if we had a learning out of a failure, we are not going to share it because we don't want to talk about the failure. So, and it goes
hmm,
across the levels. In fact, we do it because our boss probably knows that we fail, but he also wants to cover the fact that we failed because sometimes we are talking about thousands of dollars or impact in people and so on. How do you rewire a brain that has been conditioned for 20 years or so to avoid failure? Is it possible?
So that also has a little bit to do with global culture and how innovation is driven. What you're describing is very much a European view of things, that, we can't really make mistakes. If you look at the US, that is very much encouraged in certain environments, or, just failing per se is okay. That shows that you've tried something that made you brave. So what you're describing is very much wired in how society is thinking about things. So it's not innately native for a company culture. It really is how we grew up. Um, and essentially, that's what I would call a limiting belief that, you always have to win, you can't fail. That takes a little longer to rewire, but in order for this to really take hold, I do encourage middle management to, rather ask for forgiveness than for permission.
Mm,
And, you would always go with the principle of the coalition of the willing. And if you have a good idea and you can, get two or three of your coworkers motivated to maybe after hours, spend an additional hour and just try something out, do it. And then if you have created something that really is worth showing, then show it to your boss, then present it. That's what in my mind people are doing wrong, and I don't want to start the big rebellion here in organizations. But you would be surprised how many people have amazing ideas and they actually sit down on the weekend to pursue it.
mm,
So there is a lot of ideas already hiding in the cracks. So one thing is just, do it, find a couple of coworkers, build something, build a prototype, and then show it and say, hey, we've created this because we thought this was great. We didn't use our work hours, or that's what we played around during lunch. Um, and that's what, once you have something to show, that's when other doors open.
mm.
And, you could say, hey, this is one thing. We have so many more ideas. Can we use Friday afternoons to just play around with some stuff? But what I see a lot with middle management, they are oftentimes victim. And that's what we see shifting once they are part of our collective for a little bit, because they do realize that they have some power to actually, start things, to do things. If you are in middle management, oftentimes it's like, oh, well, the company strategy, just doesn't do it.
Mm.
I've tried my boss before and asked, but, always turns me down. Well, I was really hoping for a promotion, but I didn't get it. Well, if you are pushed in a corner and you're being the victim, instead of trying, how can I change the situation and how can I actually be a little bit more proactive? That's when, everything changes. Um, One of the people that are part of what we do was working in test management for software. And that's usually, you always get the shorter end of the stick, because usually that's where time is jamming. And it's like, oh, by the way, we only have 2 weeks for testing. You're going to do great, right? So she was really frustrated with that. And by, acquiring a different mindset, by rewiring her own mind, she actually took matters in her own hand. And she made a case why testing is of strategic importance and why her department needs to be staffed differently, and, how she can actually up the quality of the end product.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's always a matter of how we look at things. Do we see opportunities, or do we see the world collapsing? And I would rather have my people who are executing my strategy see opportunities.
Indeed. I love the fact that you have the experience to tell us a little bit about the European culture facing failure and the American culture facing failure, because it's very rare that I have somebody who has gone through the cracks of this differentiation. And then there is a lot of cliches. I
Yeah.
I love the way that you have described about the European mentality towards failure. It is true. It is the group that tries to hide it as such. But I also observe, in because my corporate life was mainly for an American company, that yes, you have chances to try a lot of things. Here I'm talking about big groups. I'm not talking about the startup
Hmm.
way, because in the startup world,
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
there is more similarities between Europeans and Americans. But in big corporations, I would say that what I observe is that you can try, but if you do a mistake, it's not the boss who's going to pay. You are going to pay the price. And that I found it a little bit, well, different than
But
that core
see,
mentality.
but that's an assumption. And that's where we go wrong, right? And our entire world is based on assumptions. Our entire how we are in companies is based on assumptions. Oh,
Mm,
no one is going to like that idea.
mm,
Oh, no, if something goes wrong, I pay for it. Do you know?
mm.
You don't.
No. Well, it depends, but because sometimes you have seen it happening in certain corporations, but usually, yes, it is a big assumption. But here we are talking about you can dare to do things, to make more daring things that can have big impact. But if it doesn't have the
Yeah.
big impact, it may, in certain companies, be that you are the one who is being thrown under the bus. That's
Well, in certain companies that is possible.
mm,
But, I can also tell you that these certain companies are going to have a real hard time with AI
oh yeah,
coming around.
oh yeah.
Um, and I truly think that's when, the companies that are more willing to look at how they do things are going to have an immense advantage with AI coming in. They will harvest innovation from within, and that's exactly what we are trying to do. If you use AI and you keep hiring a consultant to tell you how to use it, well, that's like the standard use cases. That's what everyone else is doing. When you really want to have an edge, you need to harvest the innovation from within because your people using it, they will know where the best opportunities are.
Mm. And very recently, well, I'm talking about 5 months ago, there was a study showing that most of proof of concept on AI are failing. So that means that you pay the
Yep.
expensive consultant to tell you what to do. You pay him like big amounts of money, because even sometimes some people I have heard coming with a 1 million POC, which is difficult to understand for me, uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's going to fail. Instead of
Mm.
investing on the curiosity of employees to make it happen and give them the freedom to test stuff, to automate their own stuff so that they can have more time to come up with bigger stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you're totally right. 1 million for proof of concept is not unheard, and the minimum you would have to cough up is at least 200,000. That's, for something that doesn't work, that's pretty immense.
Yeah.
Um, but there also is a misconception of what AI is and what it isn't, because everyone thinks it is the magical unicorn fixing everything.
Mm,
So no one really takes the time, and that's assumptions, right? That's everyone assumes that it is understood what AI can and cannot do.
mm,
But no one really dares to ask the question. It's like, hey, what? Sorry, just explain that to me like to a 5-year-old. Who would dare, right? So so we're starting this entire thing on assumptions. We are assuming that everyone knows what AI is, what it can and cannot do. But for the most part, the use cases that come out of it, from what I have seen, is people are trying to fix known issues. And it's not really, reinventing things as what AI could actually do. So, for the most part, if you were to give people the freedom to implement very simple automation that's already you already have in your software packages, what's missing right now is just the time to step back and say, hey, if we look at the end-to-end process and we get the right people in the room, where can we actually improve things?
mm,
You could actually do a lot with what you already have. And that's how you can foster, the thinking outside of the box, the collaboration. And then you can step into the world of AI and say, okay, so, totally out of left field, how can we make the experience for our customers easier? If we had a magic wand.
Hmm,
And that's when it becomes interesting. But we are dressing up AI in a way that it's not going to serve us.
hmm. I also feel that many senior managers have the belief that employees are incapable of understanding or using AI on their own. When, for instance, I hang out with friends who are 63 plus and they are developing apps with AI today. So they
Yeah,
learned 3 months ago
yeah,
and they are making apps that are amazing, that are impressive. And the
yeah,
guys weren't technical. They were maybe I mean, they were managers or they were managing directors, some of them in big companies. And now they just have time to try stuff. And it's
yeah.
the excitement that they have, this bright in their eyes when they see, oh, I did this. Wow. This is amazing that
But
we underestimate the potential of people. We are practicing AI at home.
yeah, yes, totally. But that's also an assumption that for AI, I need the IT guys. Uh, AI is super hard to understand, right? And we have to do things the way we used to do it. That's why we usually come in and run a workshop that we call Mindset Before Machines. And we go through an actual example. What are you thinking of really doing with AI? And then we look at things from different angles, and what comes out of it, usually, to 90%, the use case that they picked was really either the root cause and is in a very different angle of the company,
Mm,
but that department never wanted to do it, or didn't want to fix it.
mm.
Or it is something that can be done with a simple automation that's absolutely not AI. So yeah, it's really interesting, I love AI because it really brings out the ugly underbelly of an organization. It will show you everything that you have neglected, be it culture, collaboration, alignment between departments, your data. If your data is shit, nothing works on top of it. And
Exactly.
also, do you have your tech stack in order? So,
Mm,
but people need to know where to look.
mm.
If the order is bring me the best use cases for AI, they don't know which way to hop. It's it's prompt engineering. If you are giving them more boundaries and say, we want to select something where we have great data, and we also want to do something that has a high impact for our end consumer, you know, that's when you start looking at things a very different way. So that comes back to how do we ask questions?
And that is a learnable skill. Now,
It
I was
is.
wondering, let- let's think about there is these CEOs are they believe that they can do big transformation in a couple of weeks. I have heard about
Mhm.
culture transformations wanted in within months, 2 months to be specific. But let's talk about this cycle. So CEOs want to have results in 90 days cycle in principle. That's something that I know if it is because of some books having the 90 days somewhere. But anyways, but human the human way of learning on neuroplasticity and cultural shifts take time. How do you sell a long-term human infrastructure to a leader who is addicted to these quick and short KPIs? Is there a way to tell them to explain him why this matters now?
Yeah. And the first piece would be to do that workshop I was just talking about, Mindset Before Machines. The CEO would be part of it. And that is a tangible outcome in a very short time. So I also think we have a wrong expectation of transformation because we always think everything needs to happen at once.
Mm,
So it's like, you You shake everything out of a carton and then you just restack it. So we have that, that approach of everything or nothing. Whilst transformation, also in a cultural angle, is always about, defining the right size problem. How
Mm.
do I slice the elephant? So you can already raise awareness in a one-day workshop, and just by having people in our program for several months, you can already have results. It's always a matter of how do I define the outcome and what am I measuring? And that's what we usually define jointly. And I can tell you that from what we have done in the past 2 years, every dollar that has been invested into the Digital Wisdom Collective, you have saved about 5 in return. And that is simply because you can cut down on external consultants. On an average, that is about 20% that you can save. For a lot of companies, that is a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a ton of money. It is harder to measure how collaboration is improving because that's harder to put a number on. But if you are pulling stats from the PMI Institute and others, that is a crazy amount of money that is just getting lost each year. So to wheel in a CEO is fairly easy. You just have to speak the language. And if you can present results, in small increments and say, hey, look, this is what we have achieved so far. Can we take the next step? It is fairly easy actually to get buy-in.
Mm.
And yes, I mean the 90-day cycle is totally, we all think in quarters. Yeah, and it's great. But then we also need to start moving the problem around a little bit and say, so what is a small portion that we can take out here that we can actually achieve in a 90-day cycle? And then do we have permission to move on?
That's amazing. In fact, and I love this approach by small cycles. It seems tangible, and at the same time, it answers to the big questions. How can we get results? Because it is true, a CEO
Mm.
cannot wait 1 year to see if it had an impact, and things can
Mm.
move in a progressive and in a measurable way in order to give that results. Barbara,
Yeah.
how can people reach you out to ask more questions about this third place, about how to upgrade the employees, how to build this digital wisdom?
So the easiest is to look on our website. It's digitalwisdom.co for Colorado. And there is a button on there to book a time with me. You can book 30 minutes just to address all of the questions you have. And we can see if this is a good fit for you or just understand where you are. And the other piece is I recently started a Substack for the Digital Wisdom Collective. There's a lot of articles that I publish. I usually publish every Sunday where I compile learnings from the week and I put it in context. So there is a lot to be taken out of that.
Listen, I'm going to be putting the below this episode the address for Digital Wisdom Collective and to your Substack, and I'm going to subscribe to your Substack because that I think is I'm going to learn quite a lot. Thank you very much, Barbara, for taking the time for from wonderful Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you so much.